Hello everyone, welcome to Office Adding Community Call of December. So today we have two topics. The first one is that we will catch up to Microsoft Ignite in November, and we have another topic about update on Legacy Exchange online token deprecation. And the presenter today will be David Chesnut, who is our senior technical writer of the team. All right, so for the first section, we would like to have a short catch-up of the Microsoft Ignite event in November. And if you have not checked this blog for the What's New for Office Adding at Ignite, you can check out this link. I also send the link in chat so that you can click the link from that. And in this blog, we cover the new updates for Office Adding platforms and tooling updates, and also the Outlook updates, and also the Word, Excel, and PowerPoint updates there. And for most of the topics, they are already covered in previous community calls, but here is like a catalog that you can save and check for the recent updates. Right. And also, because like the Copilot is a very is a trending topic of in our developer community, and we would like to enable developers to build the Copilot agent. So here is that the recent information that you can check about the Copilot agent. So the first one is that you can check the Copilot agent discovery and acquisition experience from the Unified Store for Word and PowerPoint. And also for the second link, you can see a developer's guide to build your own agents there. So you can check these two links and see that, check more about the information about the Copilot agents. All right, so we have the next section. I'll give it to David. So yeah, you can share your screen.
Miss Mingjia, can you hear me okay?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
You want to share your screen or
take it?
Yeah,
so I
of course.
Can, let's see here. Things set up, sorry. It's a little bit of clutter here. All right. So hello, everyone. My name is David Chesnut, and I work on the Office Platform team, and I'm going to share an update on where we're at with the Legacy Exchange online token deprecation. Real quick, there'll be links throughout the slides that I'll be sharing, and when I get to the end of the presentation, I will go ahead and paste those into the chat. So don't worry if you see a link and you can't get to it. It'll be there at the end. So we've been talking about the deprecation of Legacy Exchange Online tokens since it was announced back in April, and I've been on the community call a few times. Just a quick reminder, these are getting turned off. And I'm going to share the timeline here for doing that. This is all part of the Secure Future initiative to make things more secure, more manageable for admins, and so on. And what needs to be happening that we've talked about before is if you have an Outlook add-in and it's using Exchange Online tokens, then it needs to move off of those to using Entra ID tokens with Microsoft Graph and nested app authentication, so that you get the single sign-on experience. So the timeline coming up for that is in February. It's our next big date. The legacy tokens are going to be turned off for all tenants. Oh, and I need to clarify here, this is only for Exchange Online. This is not for on-premise. If you're using on-premise Exchange server, that's not going to be affected by this. So February 2025, we're going to turn off the online tokens for all tenants worldwide. And if your add-in is still using online exchange tokens at that point, it will start to get errors and fail anytime it's doing something that needs an exchange token. Now, the admins will be able to re-enable the legacy tokens via PowerShell, and I'm going to show the tooling for that in just a second. But February is like the big date that's coming up. And then the next big date after that is June 2025, when we're going to force legacy tokens off for all tenants. And you won't be able to turn them back on. So even if you use the tool to turn them on, they're still going to get turned off. The tooling won't work after that. There will be an ability, like this statement says, you can contact Microsoft for an exception. I just want to point out that will be a very rare exception. The idea is like these are getting turned off, so please don't try to count on that as something that's guaranteed in any way. And then finally, in October 2025, the tokens are turned off, even if there is an exception. Exceptions are no longer allowed. So that's really the final end date for this effort to turn off the legacy exchange online tokens. So there is a FAQ that we have. I have this link at the bottom, which I'll share at the end, to our nested app authentication FAQ about turning off the tokens, has this timeline and other details, frequently asked questions. So keep an eye on that. That is basically the source of truth. We update that periodically as new information comes out or new tools are available, or whatever. So that's the spot to keep an eye on. For nested app authentication, general availability, it's mostly out there. For Windows, it's available in the current channel, and just recently in November, we're excited to say it's available in monthly enterprise channel as well. It will be coming out in January for the semi-annual channel. And then finally, June's the last milestone that we have to hit with the GA and the semi-annual extended channel. Now, real quick, I want to point out there is a nested app auth requirement set that you can use to check if the Outlook client that you're on supports NAA. And in here, I'll share this link later, but you could see the various builds and platforms that it's GA on. So it is on Outlook on iOS, it's on Android, Outlook on Mac. It will be coming soon for Office LTSC. It's not available right now, though. And then there's also some additional information about Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint, and Word. Although this is mostly focused on Outlook because the Exchange tokens are going away. So that's where we definitely need to be GA and have everybody moving on to NAA. All right, so we now have some tooling available. So you can go turn tokens on or off. As a developer, this is useful if you want to test what's happening with your add-in, make sure it's working properly with NAA and it's not using Exchange tokens anymore. You can go into a test tenant and turn the tokens off and do your testing. If you're an admin, you can use the turn tokens on or off based on what you need. So if you still have an add-in out there that's using the legacy Exchange tokens and you need to be using it, you could turn them back on in February. You could use it for that purpose. You could also use it to turn them off if you don't have any add-ins using Exchange Online tokens. So we have an article that we published. Let's get to it here. That talks about how to turn the legacy Exchange Online tokens on or off. Basically, you just need to connect to Exchange Online PowerShell, and then you can run one of these commands. There's a commandlet for set authentication policy, and if you pass the block legacy Exchange tokens, then you're going to block them and basically turn them off. If you pass allow legacy Exchange tokens, then you're going to turn them on. And I can just show that real quick. Not that this is particularly exciting, but I've already imported the module here and connected. And so if I run this command, it'll go ahead and say that it's turned those off. And then if you want to check what the status is, you can call get authentication policy on allow legacy Exchange tokens. And it'll tell you, let's see here, it's set to false, which means they're not allowed. There was one other thing I want to point out about this. Oh, so when you call this, it could take up to 24 hours before it completely rolls out across the tenant. And also these commands apply to your entire tenant. There's no ability to like apply to specific groups or anything like that. It's either it's all on or it's all off. One other thing I wanted to point out here is we have this warning to say, hey, this is only for test tenants right now, but we've been rolling out a change so that you'll be able to use this in your production tenant. You'll be able to use it in any tenant. So this will be removed tomorrow. We'll be taking this node out. I imagine you could probably use it today, but we'll take it out tomorrow. There was an issue when we first rolled this out. We had this note about it could affect some other Outlook services, which could mix things up. So that's why we said, hey, just use it for testing right now. But that is being fixed this week. So you won't need to worry about that. And This thing is right in the way. There we go. Now, some folks have been asking, like, what happens if my add-in tries to get an exchange token and they've been turned off? So basically, if you're calling any of these APIs, like make eDBS request, get user identity token, get callback token, those will fail once tokens are turned off. And if you want to see what the error would look like, I put in a little script lab snippet here that basically calls get callback token async, and then it just logs out the result with the stringify. So as an example, I've got my test tenant open over here. I went into script lab. And in script lab, there's a sample called get a user identity token. So I just started with that. And then I modified it. I just put in this new code to just dump out the JSON of that. And if you run it, and then you click on get a token, you can see it'll log out the error. So here it's saying, hey, there's a generic token error, code 9018, internal error has occurred. So this is basically what happens is you just get an error. And I'll just caution you, like this error can change based on which platform you're on. Like you'll see a different code if you're on Windows, Outlook on Windows. But if you want to try this out and see what happens, you can go turn tokens off on a tenant and then run this code, and that'll help you if you're curious about what that looks like. And then, so if you're an admin and you want to figure out like a question is like, okay, are there add-ins on my tenant right now that are using legacy exchange online tokens so that I can know what's going to happen when the exchange tokens get turned off, and are they getting updated? So we were planning to have a reporting feature in the PowerShell commandlets that would help you do this, but unfortunately it's been delayed. So we're still working on that. But in the meantime, nobody's blocked out there. We published a list of add-ins and instructions for how to go through tenant and find them. So there's a spreadsheet list with all these. So if you go to the Office.js repo, and again, I'll include all these links later, we published a spreadsheet of add-ins that use exchange tokens. And this is a report of all Microsoft Store Outlook add-ins that were using exchange tokens as of October 2024. And if you open this up, you'll just see a huge list of add-ins, and we list their asset IDs, their app IDs, and names. And what you can do is go into PowerShell, and we provide some commands that you can run. Some of them, they can, obviously, the add-ins can get deployed various ways. Like you can do central deployment, you can deploy from the store. The users can deploy them just for themselves if the admin has allowed that. So there's a few different commands you need to run across different PowerShell modules. One of them is this O365, centralized add-in deployment. The other one, Exchange Online Management. So for example, if I run this one, this gets my the ones as an admin that I've deployed. If I call get organization add-in, and so I can go in here, run this. And in my test tenant doesn't have a lot of stuff in it. So right now it just has script lab. And what you can do is take this asset ID and then go and search for that in the spreadsheet. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. In this case, that one's not listed. So I don't need to worry about that. Now, the cool thing about this asset ID is you can also go into AppSource. And if you go to the URL and you paste that asset ID in there, it'll take you to that add-in, and then you can find out who the publisher is. Because if you do see it in the list, then the next step would be to reach out to that publisher and say, hey, do you have a plan for moving to nested app authentication? Because we see that you're listed as still using these. Now, I should point out that we have published a list because some folks, oh, here it is. Some publishers have already updated their add-ins. And so as they've been doing that, we have a list in the FAQ that lists them here. So you can go through this list and see if someone's already updated. So if you find them in that spreadsheet, we're also trying to move them from the spreadsheet once we've confirmed. So hopefully we can keep that up to date. So this is all information for admins to find out who's updated, who should I be contacting, and so on. One more thing to point out, there's another command, and here you can run, it's kind of a lengthy one, this get exo mailbox. So because users in your tenant can deploy add-ins as well, if you want to find them, what this will do is it'll loop through all their mailboxes and then create the CSV file list. There's add-in CSV that has a list of everything that was installed by users. And then when you get that list, it'll look something like this. Like I just ran this on my test tenant. And basically what you want to look for is if it has an asset ID, then you can go look that up in the spreadsheet. If it doesn't, then that means that's something that was either side loaded by a developer or it was something that someone had a manifest and uploaded it. It might be a line of business application that your own organization has. And in those cases, you'll want to reach out to the developers of those to find out if they're using exchange tokens or not. This doesn't tell me that they are using exchange tokens, but it does mean you should probably check. Okay, so then switching gears here. So there's something that's been coming up recently, and I just added this to the FAQ, which is more information about how the Microsoft Authentication Library and scopes and tokens works. I've noticed there's been some confusion out there. Sometimes folks are just trying to get an ID token, and then they get a little bit stuck or they get errors because they're missing some scopes. And so I just kind of want to explain what's going on. So whenever you call acquire token silent or acquire token pop-up or any other request to get a token, the MSAL browser library, will go out to Microsoft Identity, Enter ID, and it always returns 3 tokens from that request. So you get an ID token, which gives you information about the user, like their username, email. And the scopes that represent this are profile and OpenID. That's how you get your ID token. You also get a refresh token, which would be used if the other tokens expire. So you can get a new token. And the scope for that one is offline access. And then you also get an access token to some resource, typically Microsoft Graph, but it could also be to your own resources. And so there, MSAL is expecting something like user.read. And I'm pointing this out because the ID token and refresh token, these scopes are always passed by default by MSAL. So even if you don't list them in your token request, it will still tack them on and request them so that because it needs to always get the ID token and the refresh token. For the access token, there isn't any kind of default. That's where you need to specify what it is you're accessing. And if you leave that out, the request can fail. And so that's kind of what I've just seen happening with some folks is they don't put in a scope because they're just trying to get an ID token. It's like, well, no, you need to at least have like user.read or something like that. So hopefully that makes sense. Kind of related to that, another thing I was going to talk about was this identity sort of authorization pattern. So back with the exchange token, there's a common pattern folks were using where you validate the token, get the user's identity, and then you could go use that like in a database or some other resource to do some kind of work with it. So this is an old pattern that doesn't apply with Enter ID and Microsoft Graph, but the basic idea was like you would take either the ID token or information from that ID token and pass it over the network to some resource. And so I wanted to point out like this is not the way to do things now. And so I want to talk about this slide on the proper way to pass identity to resources. Basically, you want to use the access token, not the identity token. And the reason is because the identity token is returned to your task pane, that JavaScript client. Enter ID is expecting that that's where it's getting used. There isn't anything really in that you could pass to some resource on the network, and then that resource or API, whatever it is, would be able to confirm that it came from your task pane client. So you can kind of get into trouble with that. It's an anti-pattern if you attempt to pass that identity token over the network. So instead, you use the access token, which also has the ID claims, and you would create a scope to your own resource. Like in this example, I'm calling it contoso.write. So you request that scope to my own resource. Maybe it's an API. And when I pass the access token, now the resource can validate the access token, and it'll see that the audience claim is for itself. So you do your basic validation. Once it's confirmed that the token hasn't been tampered with, it can then read the ID claims from that access token and go do whatever it needs to do, be that write entries into a database or return information back to the task pane about the user. This would be the proper way to do it. And there's a link here to more information about setting up these kinds of web APIs. And I will also be putting together a code sample that shows how to do this pattern, because I know it's the old exchange token identity validation was kind of a common pattern folks were using. So we're going to put a sample out there that says, hey, here's how you do it now. It's not a huge amount of work, but it's just important to know. Okay, and then final thing is just links for getting more information. I'm going to paste this into the chat. I want to point out, like, we do have some new samples out there. Like we have, we show how to do fallback support for the old IE WebView or Trident WebView. That's like in Outlook 2016. So if you need to do backwards compatibility into clients that don't have NAA, we have a sample that shows how to do that. We have a sample for event-based add-ins if you need to like work with Smart Alerts and SSO. And if you have any issues or questions, you can always go to the Office GS repo, put NNA in your issue title, and we'll work to follow up with you there. And with that said, I think everything's good. So I'm going to paste these links into the chat, and I will be around for a while to answer any questions folks have in the chat. I'll go take a look and see what's there. And turn back over to you, Mingjia. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, David. And thank you for all your questions in chat. There are a lot of questions. So I'm going to share back of my screen. All right, let's skip this part. Yes, so for next part is our Q&A sessions. The questions are from the survey we posted in the community call, the website, and we get several questions. So I'll go one by one. So first one question is about the NAA, and I think it's about the tooling, and I think David just mentioned in his section. So in general, the answer to this question is that the tooling is now available. So you can see these links and a blog post for more details. And also the links will be pasted into chat by David soon. Yeah. And for the next question is about an inconsistency with the image insertion in PowerPoint APIs when inserting an image without specifying positions. If a placeholder is on the slide, it should insert the image into the placeholder. So this works on PowerPoint Online, but not on desktop versions. So the team tried the behavior, and the behavior should be consistent on online and desktop versions. So we are not sure if this GitHub issue is created by you. So if you are in chat or you listen to the recording, so you can add a comment to this GitHub issue you mentioned, so that we can work with you to understand more about your scenarios and questions. And for the next question is that we need a way to check whether an Outlook add-in has been installed by admin or where app source. And for this question is that as for now, there's no way to determine that through JavaScript API, but please submit this to the tech community suggestions through this link to help us better prioritize this feature request. All right, so for the next question is that actually is a suggestions to that please create release notes for all major versions with listing what bugs are fixed with core features impacting the add-ins and add-in ecosystem, and also the Office.js APIs. So the answer is that thanks for suggestions, and we'll take that into consideration. And other than that, because you mentioned that there is like a rollback you observed. So if there is any questions you notice, please also submit the issues to the GitHub so that the team we can follow up with you. All right, and we have another question is that how can you configure Webpack to resolve Office.js model errors? So for these questions, that could you be more specific about like what errors you meet, and you can also create a new issues on GitHub about the details so that we can better help you there. Right. So that's all for the Q&A section today. So if you are new to Office add-ins, you can check out these useful links to check out the resources we provide for our documentation and the quick starts for Outlook, Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, and also the Script Lab. You can install the Script Lab add-ins so to try all our APIs and also see our samples through this link. And you can also join our developer program to see if there is any offerings or some other things there. And also you can check the Office scripts through this link. And if you meet any questions, for example, the technical questions about Office add-ins or encounter a bug, or you have some feature request or the new ideas, please feel free to check out these links to engage with the team. And when you submit an issue to these links, and please feel free to add more like specific details about how the behavior is how it behaves and what is the problem you meet there so that our team can better understand your circumstances and better help you there. All right, and for M365 developer community, we have some other community calls there so that you can feel free to check all those links and see if there is any resources to cover in this community calls. And we also the all calls and assets are all in the M365 PMP blog there. So you can check all those links there. All right, so this is all for today's community call, and the recording will be available in our YouTube channel like a couple of days after this call. You can also follow us on Twitter at Microsoft Dev and at Microsoft 365 PMP. And the next call would be next month, the January 8th, the new year, and the same time. So the agenda of the community call will be posted in the week of the community call. And also, if you have any questions before the call, you can submit your questions through this forms link. So yeah, so that's all for today's call. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. And have a good day and Happy New Year. Right. Bye-bye.